Hello, artists. My name is Candy Waterloo, and I'm curator of education at the Chazen Museum of Art. The museum is thrilled to be able to bring art and art making supplies into your homes, which we could not have done without the support of our partners at 100 Black Men. Each kit was thoughtfully created with you in mind and includes enough materials to make several versions of each project, as well as some items you might find handy in your back to school list, such as markers and glue sticks. We cannot wait for you to begin creating and learning with these kits and have a couple of tricks and techniques to share along the way. Are you ready to start learning? Let's go.
Seen here, Sam Gilliam was born in Mississippi in 1933. As a child, he dreamed of becoming a cartoonist and spent most of his time drawing. He was one of the first African American artists to create abstract paintings. Today, at the age of 87, he still has an active studio practice. Abstract art is modern art which does not represent images of our everyday world. It has colors, lines, and shapes, but these colors, lines, and shapes are not meant to represent objects or things we recognize. However, even though the art may not look like something recognizable, the artist is often inspired by ideas, philosophies, or things that exist in real life, such as nature or music. When Sam first began painting, he loved to experiment and play with materials. He would pour, splatter, and drip paint onto large pieces of canvas or fabric, and often he would fold the wet canvas onto itself to create additional marks. This is a picture of Sam in his studio sometime around the year 1980. Many of the paintings he's made over the course of his career are not framed and are meant to hang and droop just like clothes on a clothesline. He was inspired to hang canvas this way after watching women hang laundry on clotheslines from the window of his Washington, D.C. studio. The idea, he says, is to create movement through shapes, and he likes the fact that no painting will ever droop the same way twice. This painting, titled Pink Flutter, was created by Sam Gilliam in 1969. It's a little different than his droop paintings because it lives on a frame. However, the process of making this work was quite similar. On the screen, this painting looks small, but in real life, it's quite large, measuring approximately 9 by 8 feet. Abstract art can be hard to understand because we often don't have enough recognizable visual information to know what it means. The best way to approach abstract art is to ask questions when you're looking at it. Here's a few to help you get started. How do you think this was made? Did the artist fold or crumble the fabric? How many colors do you see? Which colors do you think the artist applied first? How does this painting make you feel? If this painting had a mood, what would it be? Does this painting remind you of anything? This painting is titled Pink Flutter. What do you think the artist was looking at or thinking of when he made this work? What do you see that makes you say that? Take some time and just look at this painting as a whole. Allow your eyes to move up and down, side to side, from corner to corner. What more can you find? In a moment, we're going to make our own abstract art, but I want you to do a quick warm up first. Think about your favorite song. What's that one song that you listen to over and over all day? We all have one. Now, think about that song and close your eyes. What colors do you see when you hear that song? What mood are you in when you hear that song? If you had to draw that song using just colors and lines, what would it look like? Remember, abstract art does not have recognizable images, so how would you translate a line of a song or a tempo into shapes? Take a moment or so and just do a quick sketch to warm up.
Now that you've learned a little more about the art of Sam Gilliam, we're going to try to make our own artwork inspired by Sam. In your kits, you'll notice that you have several kinds of paper. Some of the white paper is thin and some of it is thick. For this project, find the thin white paper. You're also going to need this foam sheet. You have 2 of these included in your kit, as well as your markers and this wooden skewer. Another thing that you will need that's not included in your kit is a wet sponge or a paper towel. Because our print plate is a little bit small and we have a lot of room on our paper, I encourage you to split your paper in half so you can make the most of it. If you don't have scissors, a really easy way to do that is to take your paper and fold it in half like so, and then use your finger to really push these edges. And you can use your finger for this part, or you can use like the edge of a marker, but make this line nice and crisp, and then open up your paper, and from here you can, sometimes you have to start a little bit. From here you can slowly rip the edge, you can slowly rip your paper in half. If you're worried about the edge of this not looking clean, you shouldn't be, because a lot of artists and printmakers actually leave the edges of their paper raw like this. It's just something that we don't see in the museum because things are usually framed. So I'm going to set my paper off to the side and bring my foam plate back into the picture. Now remember, this is abstract art and there are no rules to how this is done. So I'm going to begin by coloring right on top of my foam plate. So I am just using my markers and I'm being a little abstract here. So I'm just going to draw some bands of color, okay? You can do this however you want. So I'm just going to continue filling this in, and the goal is that I fill in my entire foam plate with color. Perfect. So you can see here that I have my plate nice and full of color, right? Now, what I'm going to do is one step further. I'm going to use this wooden skewer to draw some designs in here, okay? So I'm just going to take my skewer and draw some shapes right into my plate. Now, you could choose to do this part first before you start coloring, or you could do it after. It really doesn't matter. If you want lines that are finer, you could use a pen or a pencil, but essentially all you're doing is using this to create some marks and texture, and you'll see how these play out later. Now, if you want to put words in here, you can do that, but you have to put them backwards for them to read the right way, okay? That's a little bit tricky to remember, but also because we're trying to keep in the spirit of Sam Gilliam and be abstract, I'm not going to put any words in here. So I'm going to continue drawing, and I'm not really thinking about anything. I'm just kind of doing what comes to my mind. And what's coming to my mind right now is just a bunch of random shapes, lines, and squiggles. Okay, and I think that I'm going to keep, all right, so now you can see I've made a bunch of lines into my foam plate. Here is where it's time for us to start printing, okay? So I'm going to put my plate over here and I'm going to bring my piece of paper back into the picture. Now, with our wet sponge, and this is just slightly damp, I'm going to take my wet sponge and rub it over the paper just to get the paper slightly damp, okay? I'm going to bring my plate right back in, take my slightly damp paper, and lay it right on top of my picture. As I do this, I'm going to use my fingers, and I'm using the pads on my fingers here, to rub this image all the way around once over. And as I do this, you'll see that you can start to see a little bit of the ghost image through here. Now I'm just gonna rub a few times to make sure that I get all of this nice and covered. Now, are you ready for the magic? Here comes the big reveal. So as I pull my paper, you can see that I made this awesome print using just a couple of materials. Now, remember how I told you if you want to use text, it's going to print backwards, and you can see a great example of that here. So my image printed the opposite way. But how cool is that? You can use this plate again to print multiple versions of this image. All you have to do is take your sponge and wipe it off. Now you're never going to get this totally clean. There's always going to be a little bit of discoloration, but that's totally fine because you can just start the whole process right over. And there you have it. Some wonderful abstract art inspired by Sam Gilliam. Now that you've seen a couple of examples of art in the Chazen Museum of Art's collection, I invite you to come to the museum and see these works of art in person. The museum is always free, but right now our hours are a bit limited. When you get to the museum, stop by our desk and ask a friendly visitor services associate to help you find the 2 works of art you learned about here today. Until we can be together in person, we wish you continued inspiration, creativity, and joy. Bye!
To learn more about the Chazen Museum of Art, visit our website at www.chazen.wisc.edu and plan your visit today.